Okay. So it's been a while since we've done the Tanya. We had Passover, and Passover fell out a lot of times on Tuesday. And of course, that takes out a lot of the days. So let's get back into the Tanya. Let's remind ourselves what the Tanya is talking about and where we're heading. So obviously, as I've said many times, the Tanya is really a book to tell you your life's mission, how to figure out your life's mission and what we're here on this earth to do. So in the first 8 chapters, we had to set the stage. You have 2 souls. You have a godly soul, you have an animal soul. They can have expression in thought, speech, and action. We discussed what's considered an action of the godly soul, what's considered an action of the animal soul. And we discussed that there is nothing neutral in this life, because either the action is attributed to the godly soul or it's attributed to the animalistic soul. From there, we went on to there's a struggle that goes on between us. There's, so to speak, a war always going on in chapter 9 between the 2 sides of our soul. And that brought us to chapter 10, 11, and 12, which basically described this. What is someone who's considered righteous? What's considered wicked? What's considered in between? So we said righteous is someone who has complete mastery over their animalistic soul. Now, again, we discussed righteous in terms as the Tanya is describing it, not righteous in judgment. In other words, you could do some bad deeds and still be righteous in judgment. We're talking about from a certain perspective, understanding that righteous means, and this is why we say that tzaddikim, really righteous people, are very rare. People who have complete mastery and control over their animalistic soul, they never fail. So that's, and within that there were subcategories. Then we spoke about what is considered wicked. Wicked is not wicked. We would be considered wicked. Wicked, there are 2 categories. One wicked type of person is somebody who has 0 self-control. And then there's what's called the wicked person who has good, which is basically what all of us fall into, which is that we don't have complete control over our animalistic soul. However, it's kind of a ping pong, goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes our godly soul, sometimes our animalistic soul. So these descriptions of righteous, wicked, and in between basically are a description not of how we judge you, but a description of what goes on inside of you. So righteous means there's a complete mastery of righteous. Wicked means that the animalistic soul has a lot of control. And then finally, that there's the in-betweener, is the person who has both the godly soul and animalistic soul who give their opinions, but the person never fails in their thought, speech, and action. So they may have crazy thoughts, but they never give in to those crazy thoughts. We'll call them crazy. They never give in to anything ungodly. They always make the right choice. It's not easy. It's a life struggle, but that's where they get to. We discussed how we, in our lives, have certain areas of our life where we're more like the Beinoni, the betweener, where we struggle, but we'll always make the right choice, right? There's some areas of our life that we know we struggle, but we have a red line. We'll never fail in that area. Then we might have areas of our life where we're completely like we're a righteous person. There's not even a struggle. We automatically do the right thing, right? And then there are certain areas of our life where we're more wicked, where we're sometimes, well, we might call wicked, okay? It's not wicked. Again, I'm not judging anybody, but where sometimes we might fail, we might not fail, okay? Then we discussed, so what is the ultimate path to gain mastery over yourself? And that was chapter 15, 16, 17. And we're up to chapter 17. And basically, we described how the mind is the key to everything. We need to meditate in order to create feelings. And from those feelings, we need to go on to control our actions. And we discussed the importance of feelings in Judaism. You know, obviously, there's been a whole movement today about feelings. And we described that in Judaism, feelings are not maybe what today people think feelings can guide morality. No, Judaism says no, feelings are not guide your morality, but you have to harness, or you should harness your feelings to have a complete relationship with God and to set yourself up for the best success in your Jewish life. So for example, if you want to, if Passover is a little bit difficult for you, if you connect with it emotionally, you will enjoy Passover more. Any part of your Judaism where you can bring in feelings, you're going to have much better success at accomplishing what you want to do. And it's going to feel better for you. You're going to like it more. But now that we've said that, the Tanya is now going to run full circle, because at the end of chapter 17, we're going to end basically one thesis, one manner of serving God. Okay, and one manner of serving God is, as we've just described, you meditate about God, you think about God, that gives you the feelings towards God, and then you do the right actions. Okay, so you have spiritual thoughts, spiritual feelings, get to actions. And we're going to wrap that up in chapter 17, which we probably won't finish today. But that being said, the Tanya is all based on a verse. The Tanya is based on a verse that says it's very easy to serve God. And the Tanya is going to ask, really, how can you claim that it's so easy? So let us take a look here. These are powerful words from Deuteronomy. Again, everything is based on the Torah. So let's take a look here from Deuteronomy. This is what it says. Let's go from, we're going to read verse 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, no. Yeah, we're going to go through verse 11 through 14. These are very powerful words from Moses in Deuteronomy, from verse 11. Moses, I always say Deuteronomy is almost, if you read, it's like a big sermon. Moses is giving a big, long sermon, minus the jokes that I might give, but it's a big, long sermon. And honestly, if you ever want to be inspired, open up Deuteronomy. Really, it's very inspirational verses. The first 4 books are all the commandments, straight up commandments. But in Deuteronomy, you get a couple sermons, beautiful inspirational verses. So I tell people a lot, read Deuteronomy. It's a beautiful, beautiful verses. So let's read over here. So he's inspiring the people to keep the commandments, and this is what he says. Verse 11, for this commandment which I command you this day is not concealed from you, nor is it far away. So he's trying to say the commandments, they're not far away, and they're not concealed, meaning they're not hard to find. Okay? It is not in heaven that you should say, who will go up to heaven and for us and fetch it for us to tell it to us so that we can fulfill it. In other words, he's saying the commandments, they're not far away. They're easy. They're right in front of your nose. Then he continues. And again, it's a little metaphorical, but his whole point is trying to say that it's not difficult. Now let's continue. Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross to the other side of the sea for us and fetch it for us to tell it to us so that we can fulfill it. So again, describing the commandments as not being very difficult, very far. And then he continues, rather, this thing is very close to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart so you can fulfill it. So he's telling us the commandments, they're not far. They're not across the sea. They're not across the ocean. They're very close and easy to find. Now, just to take a break from deep intellectual stuff, I always like to show someone on Chabad.org made a little vignette, a little short video. It's a little bit comical, but it only takes a minute. And it basically, it shows, it presents this idea, but in like a clip of like these Vikings that are trying to accomplish great things. So I'll play it for you, whether you like it or not. I like it, so I'm going to play it. So let's just watch it just to bring home the verses that we just read. And if you have trouble hearing.
And remember, men, that which we seek may be concealed from us. It may be far away from us, but we shall go forth to the very heights of the heavens to find it. We shall sail to the end of the ocean to discover it. To the end of the ocean!
Hey there, fellas. It's not out there. Yeah, I overheard your speech, and I was just out there at the end of the ocean, and what you're looking for, it isn't out there.
Well, then, wherever it is, we shall prepare for battle.
Hey, no. It's in your heart. Sorry, I hope it's not too much of an inconvenience. Good luck, though.
So that's just a little description. It's just kind of whether you like it or not. It brings home this idea that, again, that's the verses we just read, that sometimes we think that what we're trying to accomplish is so large, so big, that there's no way we can get it done, right? And if that applies to life in general, how much more so does it apply in Judaism? I mean, you open up the book and you're like, so many commandments, so much to do, so much demanded of us. It feels like it's something for a bunch of Vikings, to go on a trip to the end of the earth. And so what Moses tells you, no, what I'm asking of you in Judaism is not very hard. Maybe a rabbi will complicate it, make it sound very hard, but it's not very hard. Now, that's what Moses says. But here's the question to you. Do you really feel that way? Does it really seem that easy? Is it really all that straightforward? So the answer is that a lot of times we confuse straightforward and easy. My answer would be is that it's not easy, but it is straightforward. That's really the message of the verse. Like everything else in life, a lot of things we confuse in our mind the difference between what's easy and what's straightforward, and it's two separate things. And so what the verse here is trying to tell you is it's very close to you, it's very near to you. If you want to do it, it's available for you to do it. Not necessarily that it's easy, but it's not complex. It's not some trip that you have to go to the end of the earth to figure out. It's right there. It's in your heart. It's in your soul. So that's understanding what Moses says. However, there's one problem even with my explanation, removing the word easy from the equation. Okay, it's not easy, it's just close. It's available. It's there for you. The problem is that Moses says like this, rather this thing is very close to you, it is in your mouth and in your heart so you can fulfill it. And the problem with this verse is the words in your heart. Why do I say that's a problem? Because as we have discussed, is while I can definitely make myself do any action that I want, while I can definitely choose to speak any words that I want, feelings are not promised. Feelings is not something that I know for sure that I can get. But yet here the Tanya is telling us, sorry, not the Tanya, the Torah, Moses is telling us, what I ask of you is very close to you, in your mouth, in your heart, so you can fulfill it. Obviously, we just described in the Tanya, the last chapters, why feeling Judaism is so important, and I described in summation today. But how can we actually say it's very close to you? Feelings either come or they don't come. They're really not promised. So this is the question that Tanya is going to ask today. How can the Torah tell you that it's very near to you to accomplish this when he says, I can understand the actions, okay, even if it's not easy, do the action, okay? It's a choice if you want to do it or not, but it's available, right? In other words, keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher, keeping Passover, nobody says it's easy, but it's available, right? It's not complex what you have to do on a general sense, right? But how can we say that loving God and fearing God is also very close and possible? Maybe yes, maybe no. So this is what we're going to study today in the Tanya. So let us take a look here. Do you see the Tanya on the screen? Yeah. Do you see the I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right.
What is within reach? It says.
Good. Yep. That's exactly it. So if you have your Tanya book, it's page 201, and so we're gonna read here what it says. So it says like this: the Tanya has consistently stressed that the key to developing real emotions for God is through meditating upon his greatness. In chapter 16, we learned that even a meditation which fails to generate palpable emotion and is only felt more subtly in the hidden places in the heart is sufficient to inspire genuine worship. With this in mind, we will now turn to an important citation on the author's title page of the Tanya, on which the entire book is based, which suggests that worshiping God is within reach. Let's continue. Based on the above, we can explain the verse cited on the author's title page of Tanya. And now he's going to quote the verse we just read to you. For this body of commandments, which I am commanding you this day, is not beyond you, nor is it far away, Rather, the thing is very much within reach for you in your mouth and in your heart, so you can do it. There's three elements mentioned here: your mouth, heart, you can do it, which is action, right? Which, let's continue to the next page. This verse, which is central to the Tanya, will be the focus of the following discussions until chapter 25. First, we will address an obvious question that will trouble any reader. For at first glance, to observe the commandments in your heart is contrary to the experience of our senses. Who could honestly say that his heart is not drawn to things outlawed by the Torah? And the entire Torah is eternally irrelevant to us. So that was a side point. Tanya dismisses the idea that the verses in Deuteronomy was pitched exclusively to a spiritually elevated generation of years gone by. The Torah is eternal, so this verse must be applicable to us. That was a side point, but it's an important point, right? People shouldn't confuse. We have to remember the Torah was written by God. God is divine, and God, that means he exists in past, present, and future, which means that when he writes something in the Torah, you can't say, well, he didn't know about us, right? No, he knew about us, and the Torah is relevant to us as well. But let's continue. So again, back to our original question, how could we say that it's very much within reach? For it would seem that the thing of desiring to observe the mitzvahs in your heart is not very much within reach, since this would require you to turn your heart away from the desires of this world to genuine love of God instead. You cannot fully love God in your heart and at the same time desire self-gratification from pleasures of this world. As Sefer Chinuch states, one who focuses his thoughts on physical matters and futilities of the world for the sake of heaven, but merely to enjoy them and to achieve illusionary honor, not intending to assist in strengthening good and upstanding people, violates the positive commandment to love God. So again, what he's saying is, as we've always said many times, is that ego is the ultimate barrier to anything good. And so our ego and our love of self can get in the way of the love of God. As the Tanya will demonstrate, not only, one second, is there a door open? No? Okay. I'm just hearing their yard stuff through the windows. Okay. As the Tanya will now demonstrate, not only is this experience contrary to the experience of our senses, it also appears contrary to the Talmud. So again, I've always said many times that Tanya is written both to the layperson and to the scholar. So to the layperson, which is me and you, the Tanya tells us, okay, you and I know that loving God in your heart is not so simple. Or it's not even promised. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't get it, right? But now he's going to prove that even the Talmud itself tells us that feelings of God are not easy. And it quotes a question in the Talmud, as it is written in the Talmud, is the reverence of God really a small thing? The Talmud asks that, whatever, it's based on verses, but the point is the Talmud itself asks this question about fear of God, right? We're commanded to both love God and have awe of God. And the Talmud itself says, since when is having awe of God easy? By the way, you know what the Talmud's answer is, which the Tanya will discuss later? The Talmud's answer is, oh, for Moses it was easy. Okay, but again, we'll leave that out of the picture. So again, the Talmud itself recognizes that to revere God is challenging for us. And if reverence of God is no small thing, then how much more so love of God? Loving God is more difficult because, as the Tanya has just stated, you must turn your heart away from desiring pleasure of this world, which is not required for reverence and awe of God. So what this is saying is, and I'm just curious if you agree or disagree, is that loving God is harder than fear of God. Now, my reason for that would be simply is that some people are like, if there's someone powerful, almighty, you can easily get afraid of them, but you may not necessarily love them. Love connotes a relationship. That's a lot harder to have with God because we don't see God. So having a loving relationship with God is harder than having an awe relationship with God. Now, you can disagree, and it's not really important to the main point, because regardless, we have to have a love and awe of God. And so regardless, the Talmud itself says having an awe of God is difficult. Main point is, though, how could the Torah, how could Moses tell us that loving God or fearing God in our heart is within our reach when not necessarily? The Tanya now cites another proof from the sages that developing emotions for God is a challenging task. Our rabbis of blessed memory also taught that it is exclusively tzaddikim, righteous, who are in control of their hearts and can summon emotions at will. To be in control of the level of tzaddik is very different from the experience of a Beinoni, whose brain rules over the heart. The tzaddik is in full control of his heart and sustains authentic feelings for God consistently. The Beinoni, on the other hand, is torn by an uncontrollable mixture of emotions in his heart and only manages consistently in his religious behavior by using his mind to overrule the desires of the heart. If that was confusing to you, I'll explain to you. So again, the tzaddik, the righteous person, is the person who can always sustain feelings of God. Anybody under a tzaddik, anybody under the most righteous people, will have trouble sustaining emotions towards God. Okay? Our verse in Deuteronomy then cannot be suggesting that consistent reverence and love of God is very much within reach for everyone, since this is not something experienced by only the tzaddik. So what does the verse mean? So to sum up our question, how can we say that loving and reverence of God is very much within reach? For us, it either comes or goes. Even in any area of our life, we can never promise we have an emotion. I mean, even loving spouses, children, things you like, feelings are fickle. Sometimes they appear, sometimes they're not there when we need them. They come and they go. So who says that we have the feelings? So he says like this. Rather, the words in your heart, and so you can do it, constitute one single phrase, i.e. the words that you can do it refer to a minimal level of love, just what is needed to bring about practical observance of the mitzvot. So in case you're confused, and we don't always spend so much time looking at verses, but what he's saying is like this. When it says in your mouth and in your heart so that you can fulfill it, he's saying it's a long run-on sentence. You have to read it that it's very near to you in your heart to do it. Meaning, there's different levels of emotion. There's deep emotional level connection with God, but then there's also a emotion that is just enough to get you to do what you need to do. Okay? And he's saying that is always in our capability. That's what we discussed in last week's Tanya. We can never promise that we'll have a flaming love of desire for God. We can never promise that we'll have an awe of God for his awesomeness and might. What we can, though, do is we can promise that we can contemplate about God in our mind and have a very basic level of feeling, at least in our mind, which will, at the very least, promise that we will accomplish what we need to do. Now, I want to bring this practical. Before I continue reading, practically what this means is, let's take it to not a religious example. Let's take it to a life example. Let's say you want to stop eating cookies. Okay, so but I like cookies. I'm not going to stop liking cookies right away. It's not something that I can promise myself. I'm not going to like cookies. But what I can do is I can contemplate the dangers of cookies and sugar, let's say, okay, to the point where my mind is in a place where I don't want it. And that's enough to tip me over the scale to not do it. Now, you're going to have to inspire yourself every time. But the point is that it is possible to gain a very basic level of, emotional feeling in your mind, if that's even a thing, to accomplish what you need to accomplish. Right? You ever hear about people psyching themselves up, getting themselves excited about something? We all can have that very basic level. Sometimes it requires talking to our mind, knowing that our feelings may not follow right away. Maybe it's in a marriage. You can talk to yourself and you can have a very basic knowledge of the facts, even if you want to comment. I was actually reading, let me talk about this. I was actually reading yesterday. There's a famous rabbi who was a famous psychiatrist. He opened up a bunch of rehabilitation centers. His name was Rabbi Dr. Abraham J. Twersky. He wrote a bunch of books. So in this book, he was actually describing that he had a psychotic patient, and nobody was able to help this patient, and this patient thought he would remain in mental hospitals for his life. And he came to Dr. Twersky's attention, and Dr. Twersky was interviewing him And then, like, he comes to him and says, eat. He tells him, eat. You should go eat. So the psychotic patient says, but I don't feel like I have a mouth. And Dr. Twersky says, but do you know that you have a mouth? So he says, I know I have a mouth, but I don't feel like I have a mouth. So how can I feed myself? So Dr. Twersky told him like this, very interesting. He said, don't worry about your feelings. Feelings are just feelings. Go with what you know. You know you have a mouth. And so take the food and put it where you know you have a mouth, even though you don't feel like you have a mouth. Now, the guy wasn't faking. He really 100% felt that he did not have a mouth. Now, again, it's psychotic. We cannot understand how he had such a disconnect between what he knew and what he felt. But my point is that even in such a scenario, Dr. Twersky was able to take this patient and slowly train him to live according to what he knew, not worrying about what he felt. And even though his feelings were completely the opposite of what he knew, he was able to bring to a place where he could say, this is what I feel, and this is what I know. And to some extent, that's what the Tanya is telling us here, is that we cannot necessarily affect entirely our feelings. And sometimes people feel depressed about it. Well, I don't feel connected to God, or I don't feel the love. I don't feel this. I don't feel that. I don't feel passive. I don't feel this. And sometimes we have to turn to ourselves and say, what the Torah tells us is that the feelings are only important in as much as they bring you to the act. Well, feelings are great, and we want to have as much feeling as we can. But even if we cannot get there, the basic feeling that God asks of us is the feeling that's, so to speak, in our mind. What our mind knows, what our mind feels, if we can get at least that very basic level, that's within our reach to accomplish our goals of what we need to do. So again, very interesting story. It's interesting. I just happened to read it yesterday, but a very interesting story. So let's take a look here at the text again. Let's get back in here. Worship of God is in your heart, but only sufficiently that you can do it. No more than that. The verse is not suggesting that a consistent emotional bond to God is possible in your heart. Rather, it teaches that to conjure enough feelings for God to practically observe his commandments is within reach for you. Inside, you may still be torn emotionally, but generating the minimal arousal necessary for disciplined control of your actions should be manageable. According to this interpretation, Deuteronomy supports the second all-encompassing principle of chapter 16, that even if your intellectual capacity and cognitive focus proves insufficient to generate love of God tangibly in your heart, that is still acceptable since in your heart so that you can do it refers to a minimal level of God, sufficient only to bring about practical observance of your mitzvot. Let's continue here a little bit longer. This minimal love being the desire of the heart, which is generated at least subtly in the hidden places in the heart through meditation, even if it's not palpable in your heart like a flaming fire. So again, as he says, as we learned in the previous chapter, while meditation will not always bring you to having tangible emotions for God, it should lead you to at least having the subtle feeling of God in your hidden places in the heart. What I want to say, though, is that the chapter still nevertheless says, even though you cannot promise emotions, meditation is still, though, vastly important. That's basically what it says. The key to action is meditation, thinking. The key to any human being is thinking. We need to think. We're in a world, unfortunately, today, where sometimes we never stop to think. I think maybe that's why there's so much of a focus on emotions. People never have the time to stop and think. Thank God today there's a lot of groups talk about mindfulness and meditation. That's very good because, and I think it's a backlash to the world we've been living in for a long time, which is the rat race of life and the hamster wheel in which everybody's been running, and people have no time to think. And in fact, I was on the phone with somebody today and telling them, sometimes, talking about, the expense of therapy. So I said, sometimes the benefit of therapy is just that you paying good money so that you give yourself at least an hour to think a week, That itself is a worth it thing. We're so busy in life, we never think. And as they say, to be successful, you have to be intentional. So we're in a world again today where we never think, we don't have time to think. And that's one of the beauties of daily prayer. Daily prayer gives you a moment to contemplate, meditate, think. Of course, we can spend more time than that meditating, but taking that time to think, to allow our actions to be led by our mind is such an important practice. And that's really what the Tanya is all about. As the Tanya says, it is near to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. The importance is that it all leads to action, and the action starts in your mind. Let's read a little bit more of it here. So he says like this. He says, and this is the thing which is very much within reach and easily accessible for anyone who has a brain in his head. So hopefully we all have a brain in our head, right? I hope so. Because you can control what you think in your brain, and using your brain, you can think about whatever you want. And as we mentioned in previous chapters, when we say you can control what you think, you have to be mindful of it, right? If you're not thinking about anything specific, your mind will wander. But you can direct your thoughts. And if you will think about the greatness of the blessed infinite one, you will inevitably generate, at least in your mind, a love for God, sufficient to inspire you to attach yourself to him through the practical observance of the mitzvos and studying his Torah. So again, that's the important line. Sufficient to inspire you to attach yourself to him through the practical observance of mitzvot and studying his Torah. And as he sums up here, you cannot choose to have feelings for God, but you can choose to think about his awesomeness. Even if your thoughts don't succeed in generating strong emotional connection with God, you will be able to generate at least enough motivation to obey his will, i.e. to observe the commandments. So while loving God intensely may not be very, very much within your reach, generating a minimal feeling for God sufficiently to observe the mitzvahs is within your control. I'll go a little bit further in a moment. I want to give a caveat that we've discussed many times in our classes, and that is that remember that although it is within our reach, we have to want it. That's the first most important stage, is do we actually want it? Okay, so again, what he's saying here is if you choose to meditate, you will be able to create enough mind power and emotional mind power, and maybe even a little bit of heart power, to accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. But there's a stage that's missing before that we didn't discuss, and that is that you have to want to do that meditation to lead to those actions. So there's a matter of choice that starts with, okay, and that choice starts with, is that what I really want? Because if you go into this meditation without that desire, then that meditation won't bring you to there. Okay, it's like anything else. It's if I'm not fully committed to exercising, right? So again, let's say if I really want to exercise, I just need the motivation, right? That's what people talk about. I need the motivation to get up. Then that's okay. Then you study about it, you read about it, you meditate about it, you'll get doing it. But if you're not fully bought into it yet, if the desire is lacking, then the meditation may not lead there either, because it may not, because it's not what you desire. So just putting that out there. What the Tanya is saying is, if you choose to do the commandments, it's very much within your reach. If that's your choice, it's very much within your reach. You meditate, you think, you'll be able to overcome your inclinations. That's what the Tanya is telling us. Let's continue here. But by the way, it's still an empowering thought. To know that it's within our reach is an empowering thought. To know that if I choose to do it, I can, is empowering. My brother was here, and he was saying something interesting, is that, obviously myself and my brothers were getting older now, right? In our 30s. And we were discussing the thing, maybe the things we wish we studied when we were younger. But he remarked that we could say I wish I did it when I was younger, but in 20 years from now, I could say the same thing. I wished when I was 30s, I did that same thing. So it's always very easy to go back and say, I wish I did it when I was that age. Now it's too late. But no, our mission is right now. We have to think about not what we could have done in the past, but what we can do today. And so don't let the what ifs ever cloud what you can accomplish. Just because you didn't do something when you were younger doesn't mean you can't do that thing when you're older. And let's in fact read that follow-up with what it says here. Ecclesiastes says, V'zeh kol adam, and the conclusion of the matter is observing his commandments, for this is the whole purpose of man. And let's continue. For the verse states regarding the mitzvahs, do them today. The word today is what I'm focusing on. Is what I just mentioned a moment ago, right? We can always say, I wish I did it, right? What about today? Meaning that today, in this lifetime, in this physical world, the specific emphasis is on the practical mitzvos. Hayom la'asosam. It says today to do them. and it's only tomorrow in the afterlife that you will receive reward, as explained elsewhere, right? So some religions maybe focus on the reward in the afterlife. Judaism says we focus on the here and now. We focus on the actions that we need to do today. Don't look at your life and say, well, I'll be judged favorably in heaven. I'm going to get to heaven, so I don't need to do much. The mission, the entire being of a person, says Ecclesiastes, is to do the actions today. Let's continue. Both scripture and Talmud indicate that your main emphasis in this lifetime should be full, practical observance of the commandments. This is an achievable goal, and you should feel a sense of accomplishment in it. Only in the afterlife will you experience God fully with an unconflicted emotional intensity. So he's making another point here. He's saying even feelings for God that you would create in this lifetime will never be the same feelings you'll have after you pass away. When we pass away and our soul is inhibited, I'm missing the word, when your soul is basically unchained, unbound by the body, then you'll feel all the feelings you need to feel for God. The purpose of feelings today are to connect you to God through action, right? The idea is to do the commandments with a feeling towards God. As we discussed many times, we have this balance. The Tanya will discuss this balance the entire time. Some people love the feelings of Judaism. Some people love the actions. And the Tanya says you need to have both. But you don't just want to have the actions, you want to have the feelings. But you don't just want to have the feelings, you want to have the feelings that lead towards actions. So he answers like this. He ends up like this. Observing all the mitzvahs is entirely within your capability, since as we've learned in chapter 12, inherently naturally the brain rules over the left side of the heart, and through this path, it also rules over the mouth and over all the limbs and the instruments of action. So what he's saying here is that we all have the ability to accomplish what we need to do today, where we are commanded that we are commanded to love God. We are commanded to do the deeds, and ultimately we're really commanded to do it all together. And so what Tanya wants to tell us is that our job in life is the behavior. And if I can generate enough feelings to create that behavior, that is enough. Some religions maybe focus on meditation. Judaism does also have meditation, but never, ever, ever is it meditation exclusively. Meditation always has to be that it leads to something, that it leads to an action. That's why there's a lot of meditations that I think are called mind-clearing meditations. While that may be a technique that someone in Judaism may use, it's not generally a Jewish meditation, because Jewish meditations are usually about something, not the absence of something. It's not about clearing your mind, it's about filling your mind with the right thoughts. Now, I'm not an expert in mind-clearing meditation, so I could be totally off on this. Just my recollection, I looked into it a while ago. I could be off, so I'm not so into it. But just I'm saying it for a point, for an idea. Okay, maybe mind-clearing meditations are used for something else, but you get the idea that the purpose of meditation is that the meditation should lead me to somewhere, to a place of action, to a place of doing. Because in Judaism is really a very balanced religion. Knowledge is not enough. Actions are not enough. Feelings are not enough. Speech is not enough. You need to have everything. Judaism is about a balance. We need to have both our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our speech, our knowledge. All of these are elements that are necessary. And the Tanya really goes through in the entire Tanya, what's the purpose? What does each and every single one of these accomplish? And when is it necessary? When is it less necessary? That's really the beauty of the Tanya. It gives us a path forward in life. And so, for example, here, while it tells us what needs to meditate about God, it also gives us the practical reality, is that you may not always have the feelings that you might think you need. And so the Tanya is here to tell you, just don't worry. As long as you have a basic minimal level of feelings to get you through what you need to do, that's enough. And to me, that's an empowering message. And that's why I love the beauty of the Tanya. Again, it really leads us to our purpose and goal in life. Because when you just study the Torah, let's say, you might just get, well, I need to do the 613. But there's a lot of subtlety to Judaism. And so that Tanya goes through all the different things that we need to do in Judaism, whether it's our thought, whether it's our study, whether it's our actions, whether it's our intentions, and what role all of those play, how important they are, and what they can do for us as the Tanya will continuously develop. But that is really the sum of today. And I'd like to hear from any of you. If you have any thoughts you want to share on today's discussion. As I'm going to wrap it up here, as I said, I didn't have as much time to prepare, but I wanted to get started back into Tanya. Next, yes, Adam.
Yes, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just listening. The the meditations for clearing, I do experience. So maybe I know a little bit more than the rabbi.
Yes. I don't know much about it. I looked at it. I looked into it a while back.
Well, it's actually a creation, but that's not what we're talking about, right?
No. Again, I just mentioned it to bring out a point, not necessarily that mind clearing meditations are bad, just to bring out the purpose of meditation in Judaism. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, as always, a lot to think about and a lot of good content. Thank you. Yashikoa was very, very great. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad we got the Tanya started back up again. I had a crazy day, but I said we gotta get started. Gotta get back into Tanya, because if you don't start, you don't go. We're talking about here motivation, right? That's been really a lot of today's discussion. Whenever you want to start something, sometimes you just have to start, right? You got to just start doing it. There's never going to be a right time. There's never going to be a time when you're going to be motivated enough, and that's really the message of the Tanya. You're never going to be motivated enough, right? I could have easily said I had a busy day. I don't want to give that Tanya class, and then, honestly, there was a part of me that didn't want to. Once I started, very happy, that we got it done and we accomplished it and we started it. But there's a part of me that said, you've had a crazy day. You deserve another break. Just take another week. What's the big deal? Wait another week. But that's the whole message of the Tanya we just read now, is that no, you just need enough motivation to do the action. You don't need to be feeling, oh wow, I really want to give that class, right? And the same thing in your own lives. You don't need to wait till you feel you really want to do that mitzvah. You just have to get inspired enough that you want to do it. You don't need, again, that's the differentiation he's giving here. There's that real feeling like, oh, I really want to do this, right? So that's why when people tell me, Rabbi, I don't know if I really want to do it. You don't have to really want to do it. You just have to want to do it. You just have to have enough inspiration to want to do it, just to get it done. And honestly, if in other areas of our lives we waited till we really wanted something, it'd be a big problem. I mean, imagine if some of us do this. I do this sometimes, right? If we only drink water when we really feel really thirsty, right? You fall into trouble. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I act like that, but it's not good, right? You got to remind yourself, you got to drink before you're too thirsty, before you really, really want it. You got to eat before you're really super hungry, and you got to do the mitzvah. The only way you're going to jump into the mitzvah or anything good in life, the exercise, anything good in life, you're going to have to jump into most of the time for most of us before you're fully inspired and feeling it. Maybe after you start doing it, you'll actually enjoy it more, and probably you will. But that's, again, the message of today's Tanya. Meditate enough to get the mind power to start doing it. That's what I would say. And I would say, just as my Rabbi Adler addition to the Tanya, now maybe it talks about it later, but once you start doing it, more feelings will come. More of those feelings will appear as time goes on. All right. Any questions?
Yeah, my adding to that, my dad used to say, may he rest in peace, just do it. He used to tell me, and what you're saying really hits home for me, because I got a couple of things that really I know I need to do it, like you talked about today. Yeah,
but we're always waiting till we really want to do it. Right.
Right.
I just want to say, just to change what your dad said, instead of just do it, we say just do it.
Oh, that's cute. I like that. I'm gonna write that one down.
Just do it. Just do it.
I'm gonna write that. That's cute.
Good. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you again. Sorry we're ending early, but that is what it is. And for those who follow my YouTube channel, I'll also be uploading the speech by the Israeli soldier. Now, you missed out if you didn't come in person. You didn't get to hear the question and answer, which is even better. But the recording, I took a recording. It's not the best recording, but I will be uploading it to the channel so you can listen to his very inspiring speech.
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, Rabbi.
Take care. Have a good one. Good to see everybody.